Hey everyone, welcome to the stream. I'm Derek Ashong, and you are here with us in our pre-show. This is where we get a chance to talk about a little bit of issues of the day before we go into the full broadcast. Remember that after the show, we will be live online talking a little more in depth about some of the issues that we brought up. Today we have a really special show. Ahmed, Salman, welcome. It's great to see you guys here. How's it going?
I'm doing great. Great to be on the show, man.
Excellent. It's such a pleasure to have you guys. You know, I think today is going to be exciting for a couple of things. We're going to dive deeper into some of the issues that are going on in Pakistan and trying to get a little bit more insight into what's happening on the ground. Before we do that, though, I want to also, for those who are watching online, James is back there fixing Ahmed's mic, making sure his batteries are working. So it's not like somebody just accosted him on set.
It's okay.
This is just so you understand what's happening, and we're going to make sure that Salman's is equally all good. Before we jump into main topics, Ahmed, what is this you got up on your screen?
Well, we got news today. In fact, actually, I guess it's 12 hours ago now that Hassan al-Hamlawi, who was actually on our show, and he's a Egyptian human rights activist, and he's been kind of called in.
He's the founder of Piggypedia.
Piggypedia, yeah. We did a show about him.
Yeah.
He was on a TV show, a very popular TV show in Egypt, with this lady right here, and she's a journalist, and they were both asked to come in by the military in Egypt to testify, I guess, against allegations that he was making on her show of abuse, where he was saying that, the head of the military should be held accountable, essentially.
This is interesting because, to give context to those who have not seen the previous show on this guy, Hossam, is a blogger who started this thing called Piggypedia. And basically, Piggypedia is a place where, the argument is, look, you got cops that will go out and there's a protest and they'll beat up some protesters, then go home and take their kids out for ice cream. And they're like, it shouldn't be that way. They have to be held accountable. We should name and shame those who commit abuses and torture. So they created a site where you could actually upload videos of people who have allegedly committed acts of violence and torture.
Yeah.
And so it's very interesting that the security forces or the military are asking him to come in to speak to them, because we don't know what could be the outcome of that.
Right.
And I think it's
over now.
It's over now.
Actually, yeah, they're done speaking, and we have some things we found on Twitter. I mean, basically what happens, he said on her TV program, her name is Reem Majid.
Yeah.
He basically said that the head of the military police should be held accountable for human rights abuses. And right here you'll see this is people protesting outside of the military council where he was being questioned in Egypt. Then we also have a tweet here. Apparently he's going to appear on a special episode of ONTV in Egypt with Yusri Fouda, who used to work with Al Jazeera and who's a journalist in Egypt. And this is just a quick picture of him exiting the Niyaba, I believe. Either going in, this is him, as you can see, Hassam right there.
But do we know what happened after he left?
No. And that's why I think the big reveal is going to be on this TV show, this special episode.
Yeah. So, I mean, Salman, what's your take on this? Because it seems like there are people who are willing to stand up. This guy's been having Piggypedia up since, I think, 2008 or so, way before the revolution. But, what happens when you're willing to stand up, but the powers that be are watching you?
Well, traditionally, like in countries in the Middle East and in Pakistan also, army security services have been sacred cows. That no matter what happens, you can't, you can't hold them accountable to anything.
Yeah.
But just to give you an example of what happened in Pakistan in May alone, the most wanted man being killed by a U.S. operation, in which the army and the security services had no idea he was living there for 5 years.
Yeah.
B, that a helicopter invasion happened, took 1 hour in Pakistani airspace, and the army didn't know what was happening.
Yeah.
So people were saying either you're complicit or you're incompetent.
Yeah.
That would never have happened a year ago or before that. So from the citizen journalism that you're talking about and through social media, there are no sacred cows anymore.
It's almost like people are feeling they have more courage to challenge even the powers that be, or all of the things that were difficult to talk about before are now coming into that public discourse.
Salman was talking earlier about, this kind of sense of fear, and we often talk about this fear factor and how it's been broken. I mean, just in this article that's saying, just quickly here, we have some of the banners that are being held by the demonstrators outside of where Hassan al-Hamlawi in Egypt was being asked questions or interrogated. They're saying things like, you are not God so as to ask people not to criticize you. And prior, people probably felt this way, but we're so afraid to say it.
Yeah.
And even though this is a very simple statement, I mean, they're not gods. And
well, also, they're not gods, they're no pharaohs either, right?
Yeah.
The fact is that I think there's a stage that comes in society where people say enough is enough.
Yeah.
And I think in Egypt, Tunisia, and now in Pakistan, I just want to let you know that 35,000 innocent civilians have died as a result of the terrorists. 35,000. 18 hours every day, there's no power in Pakistan, right?
2 minutes there.
And blah 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 blah.
No,
blah,
but this
blah.
is a big
important,
deal. Like 35,000 people, and you're saying 18 hours
So 18,
per day. There's no
18 hours a day, people don't have power,
Yeah.
right?
like
And there's
Lebanon.
water scarcity. So, the stage of what? I'll just keep my dignity to myself.
Yeah.
When you take away people's dignity, then there's nobody who deserves that kind of respect. Look, the army has taken 16% of the national budget, right? They're the ones who are the defenders of the borders.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? You had a terrorist attack just 4 days back at a naval complex where 4 guys took over a naval compound for 18 hours.
So hold that thought, because I want you to bring that up in
we're gonna
the
go live.
main show, because a lot of people have been talking about that naval attack and how could it happen.
Yeah, yeah.
And I definitely want to get your input
Sure,
on it and want to
absolutely.
draw the audience into this. Like I said, folks, this is going to be a hot show. I think that one of the things that's interesting from our perspective is when Hossam al-Hamlawi, before he was arrested, there was an article that was written about his campaign against Flickr for censoring Piggypedia, and we're literally finding that people are watching our show and taking stories from it. So what I'm hoping is that as we get deeper into these issues of what's happening in Pakistan, that more people will be willing to talk about it and hopefully push these stories a little
realign
bit
the
deeper.
narrative.
A little bit deeper, absolutely.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us in this pre-show. We're going to dive right into it right now. Definitely stay tuned, and remember, you can talk to us afterwards during the post-show. We will see you on air. Hi, I'm Derek Ashong, and you are now in The Stream, a social media community with its own daily TV show. As always, we're bringing you the stories that are ongoing, global, and sourced from social media. Today, while Pakistan's fight against the Taliban continues to grab headlines, the harsh realities facing Pakistani youth continue to be ignored. As always, our digital producer Ahmed Shihab Eldin is here, and joining us for the first time on the couch is world-renowned musician and activist Salman Ahmad. Salman, thanks so much for joining us. Before we get deeper into this, talk to me a little bit about the power of music.
Sure. So peace be upon you, and it's great to be on this show. The power of music in my career, as I wrote in my book, Rock and Roll Jihad, is that it creates cultural collisions. It brings spirituality, politics, people together in a way so there's a platform, a united platform. It brings people together. And right now, the country of my birth, Pakistan, is in a place where it needs unity. And so I'm hoping through arts and culture, we can bring together centrists and liberals and conservatives on a common platform of peace and security.
I love that. I think that music has the power to transcend a lot of traditional divisions. And I'm glad you brought your guitar, because we're going to get to hear a little bit from you and that young instrument of peace in just a minute.
We're going to do some jamming.
We're going to do some jamming, absolutely. Ahmed, talk to us a little bit about what people have been saying online.
All right, Derek, we'll get straight to it. We have a tweet from Roti Kismis coming out of Indonesia, and he's alerted us to a story of the ongoing eruptions, as you can see, of a mud volcano in Indonesia. It's called Lucy, and it's displaced some 40,000 people after appearing 5 years ago, so in 2006, in the middle of a rice field. Now, there are questions about whether or not it's a natural volcano or if the eruptions were prompted by gas drilling. And as you can see in this photo, it's still erupting, even though at a lesser level. And the company behind the drilling, Lapindo Brantas, has agreed to pay more than $700 million to the victims, and yet they're still contesting the fact that they are responsible for this. So they're not admitting to guilt, and this case is victims are still planning on staging protests in order to try to get their voices heard. So we see protests around the world, but this is an actual case of where people are protesting for a specific cause.
That's really a trip. I mean, it's interesting because we were hearing from Azita Ardakani, who was on our show last week, and she was talking about a film that she helped to promote via social media called Gasland.
Right.
And that was talking about the impact of natural gas drilling in dealing with aquifers. So I think that it's worth considering what are the environmental impacts of the way we get our energy.
Yeah, and you know, we have tons of photos that are circulating on various social networking platforms documenting this. This is one on Instagram. We just want to share with you. Another story that we are hearing about, we received news of a Thai-born U.S. citizen who was arrested on Friday for blogging material that was deemed insulting to the royal family. Now, you know, this can definitely end you up in jail.
Not the British royal family.
No, the Thai family.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, precisely. But, you know, so he's 54, and what he did is he translated parts of this book, which is banned in Thailand, because this book is an unauthorized biography of the king, Adul Yadej, and the book is banned, and so under the lèse-majesté law in Thailand, you can end up in jail for 15 years. I think that's the maximum punishment. And it's worth mentioning that this story came to us from Saksith Sayasumba, who is a member of what we're calling the Stream Contributor Program. So if you want to find out what the Stream Contributor Program is, or if you want to share your stories with us, you could do so on our website, stream.aljazeera.com, and of course, you can tweet us at AJStream.
I'm Rose Ben Kabumire. I am a Ugandan blogger and a journalist based in Kampala, and I'm on the street.
With more than 60% of Pakistan's population under the age of 25, you would think the country has a lot to look forward to. But as Pakistan continues to struggle with internal violence, are the youth becoming disillusioned with the direction of their country? Before we even set the full stage of what is happening in Pakistan, I want to show you an image that was first actually brought to my attention by you, Salman, and this is dealing directly with the treatment of a particular youth in Pakistan. This is a 17-year-old girl, and this video shows her being flogged by the Taliban. Now, I think that says it all right there. I mean, you can hear the fear and the pain in her voice. And, I mean, to see an image of a 17-year-old girl being held down by 3 grown men, at one point 4 grown men, you know, I'm just thinking, how does this impact people in Pakistan? What do they think of what's happening in the country?
Well, Derek, you know, when this took place in the Swat Valley, right, not only were there 4 men, you know, 3 holding them down and 1 sort of whipping her, there's 100 men in a circle watching that.
Yes.
You know, and so these are thugs masquerading as holy men who've hijacked Islam in Pakistan, right? And what's happened since then is 35,000 innocent civilians have died as a result of terrorist attacks in Pakistan. You have these militias which are out of control, which just took out 2 Navy planes. They occupied a naval complex in Karachi for 18 hours, and they blew up 2 planes, $36 million each. Right? And the army and the security services had no idea how to deal with it.
Well, and it seems it's undermining people's belief in the army. I mean, we saw a tweet from Memel that says, no difference between the army, ISI, and Taliban, Al-Qaeda, jihadis, fanatics, bigots. They will all kill you whenever they want. You know, we were speaking in the pre-show about how there used to be a time in Pakistani culture where the army was kind of a sacred cow, so to speak. You couldn't speak against it. But it seems like people are starting to raise their voices.
Well, for the last 64 years, the army has controlled foreign policy, security, and they've got their hands now into real estate, in every kind of business endeavor. And there was a joke that somebody sent me on email in which said, for security, call Brinks. Because the army doesn't know what they can do. And this was exhibited not only this Navy complex terrorist attack, but the fact that the most wanted man on earth, Osama bin Laden, was captured and killed by American forces near in Abbottabad. Now, the fact is, I remember watching your show a couple of weeks ago, there was a kid on Twitter in Abbottabad who knew there were American helicopters in Abbottabad, but the army and the security services and the ISI had no clue.
You know, that was amazing because this was really interesting. That was our first day on television, and his Twitter tag is @reallyvirtual.
Right.
And the entire international media was trying to get him. We were the first to get him on camera. We had him in via Skype from Abbottabad, and he literally tweeted what happened live, but he didn't know. And the military seemed to be clueless. But the issue that people have been saying is that, well, someone had to know that he was there.
Well, here's the point. If you just look at 2011, Derek, in January, the governor of the biggest province in Pakistan, Salman Ahmad, just because he wanted to debate a law, a blasphemy law, which is man-made law, not an Islamic law, he was shot down by his own guard.
Yes.
And civil society didn't do anything. In fact, lawyers actually applauded the assassin's gesture.
And wasn't there a second subsequent killing?
Following January, then you had the minorities minister, Shahbaz Bhatti, who was gunned down. And
because of speaking up against this blasphemy law.
for human rights.
Yeah.
And in a convoluted way, you have this battle of ideas happening between conservatives, radicals versus liberal society. Yet it's really a battle of ideas of hope versus despair, peace versus violence, and unity versus division in Pakistan.
That's a really, really salient point. And I think we're getting some interesting comments coming in already from Twitter. What are you seeing, Ahmed?
Yeah, you know, people are just highlighting someone, Jeremy Scahill, who you may know, is saying that many Pakistani journalists have also been killed doing their jobs, trying to report on terrorism. And you know, the reason we mention this is because sometimes terrorism can be viewed as an isolated threat. People don't look at the causes behind it. You know, the fact that there's double-digit inflation and a quarter of the population is in poverty. So, you know...
So let me give you an example of day-to-day life. In some places in Pakistan, there's no electricity for 18 hours. Okay? People can't put food on the table, and then there's daily wanton violence. Okay, and so it's a stage where, you know, people say we've hit rock bottom. Well, in this case, in Pakistan, the bottom has fallen out, and now where do we want to go? Do we want to just watch this wanton violence descend into chaos and anarchy in a country with nuclear weapons, or do we want a civil society united movement for peace and security, to demand peace and security?
I want to talk about that because in our Storify, as we were researching this project, we came across this image, and it's of a woman protesting, and she's holding up this sign that says, "Stop killing in the name of Islam." And I think that this is really the essence of what we kind of want to get to is, how do you stop that kind of violence? What do you do when a nation and it's so interesting to think about, Pakistan is a globally very important nation, significant population, and you've also, as you mentioned, it's a nuclear armed state, but it seems to be disintegrating in certain ways internally. How do you stop that trend? How do you reverse it?
So Derek, first of all, the killing in the name of Islam, people have hijacked Islam. There's the radicals seem to own the airwaves. You know, there's all these TV channels, but you have these radical views that anything that happens is because of America's fault. You know, so they deflect all the blame on these thugs. Thugs masquerading as holy men, right? First of all, they're deflecting the blame towards anti-Americanism.
And we've seen this around the Arab world as well.
Right now, and the state also is completely leaderless. When this Osama bin Laden incident took place, it took 15 to 20 hours for the Prime Minister or the President or anybody from the security services to come out and say what happened. Everybody was lost. So civil society right now in Pakistan is saying, well, if you can't protect our lives, if you can't give us electricity, well, why are you controlling the state in which the Prime Minister daily cost of living is 10 lakh rupees? That's 1 million rupees per day, where the common man doesn't have food on the table.
Salman, sorry to interrupt you. I just want to quickly ask you then, because you were talking about leadership and you talked about the youth and the importance of the youth. We have a tweet coming in from Mastra Lenk that's saying, is there a young person-based progressive movement in Pakistan? Because the future obviously lies with the youth.
Okay, so this is what I believe, that look what happened in Tunisia, what happened in Egypt. I think Pakistan right now has a huge leadership vacuum, but not for a political party or a partisan force, but for a non-political, non-partisan platform for peace and unity. And this is centrists, radicals, centrists, right? Liberals and conservatives coming together, from all sides of the fence to come together and demand unity, peace, and security from the state.
So this is an interesting point that we found also in our Storify. This is from our blog post called "Why is there no revolt in Pakistan?" If you look at my screen, the woman writes, "Why are the people in Pakistan not revolting against the government that is corrupt, conniving, and clearly confused on how to handle the bin Laden operation? Where are Pakistan's youth, the essential drivers of change? Where are the university students, doctors, engineers, rickshaw drivers, musicians, and more?" And that's exactly to your point. Why is the civil society not coalescing to pursue change? And especially when you see it happening in so many different parts of the world.
So, Derek, basically civil society has been faced with an onslaught of violence. 35,000 innocent civilians killed as a result of terrorist attacks and also drone attacks with the collateral damage that comes from drone attacks. But ever since Osama's capture and killing, and also this Navy complex, you've had lawyers, writers, students questioning vociferously on talk shows and Twitter and Facebook the role of the army and the state. And I feel right now there's a huge vacuum for a civil rights movement to take place in Pakistan.
Yeah. So to that point, we're going to actually be speaking in just a minute to some young Pakistanis. Remember, if you want to share your stories with us, you tweet us at AJStream. We always rely on you, our online community, to help keep us informed. Next, we're going to talk about what kind of country Pakistan's new generation is inheriting.
I'm Jigger Mehta, and I'm one of the co-founders of 18daysinegypt.com, and I'm in the stream.
Now, the overwhelming majority of Pakistan is a very young population, and they probably have a bigger stake than anyone in the future of their country. But are their voices actually being heard? We came across a very interesting video that was actually looking at young people. It's not so much a video as it's kind of like a visual slideshow, but I want to play a little bit of it. These are young people protesting about what's been going on in their own communities. Let me give you a little bit of an insight into this. Now, this is a children's protest, and they're actually talking about the influence that the Taliban has had in their community and the fact that there have been roads that have been shut down, literally, by the Taliban that they cannot use to travel anymore. Now, what happens when you get to the point where people are actually seeing children getting out and protesting? And this is one of the reasons why we wanted to bring in a couple of young people from Pakistan to kind of join this conversation. So joining us now via Skype from Karachi is Sana Saleem. She's a Pakistani activist and a Dawn News blogger. We know it's after midnight there in Karachi, so thank you, Sana, for staying up so late to join us. Also from Doha is Al Jazeera English web journalist Asad Hashim. Welcome, Sana and Asad, both to the stream. So, Sana, let's begin with you. We've just been talking a little bit about what seems to be the disintegration of certain aspects of civil society in Pakistan. How does that affect young people, and is this an accurate representation of what's happening?
It's definitely an accurate representation, and I think that it's affecting us really badly, because of course there's an absence of public discourse, and because both political and the public debate has been so strongly polarized that there's no sense, there's no sort of, you just spoke about leadership, but leadership is just a step ahead. We don't even have common consensus or public discourse on one of our most pressing issues. Like, I cannot even speak of accountability with the military or the intelligence agencies without being called a traitor, or without being made to feel that I'm sort of maligning the country's image, or if I'm questioning the sovereignty. So, it's like it's been reinforced over the years through media, through education, through our lies that have been told in our books, and in various many ways. So if I was to put how we feel as youth right now, or how the youth feels in Pakistan right now, I would say that there's a terrible state of confusion. and the public discourse lacks clarity, and it's deeply polarized.
Well, this is, I think, an interesting comment has been brought up on Twitter that reflects largely what you're saying. Ahmed, could you give us?
Yeah, Gutmang is kind of framing things the way you are saying, as the U.S. and Pakistan squabble and play blame game. The real victims are the people of Pakistan who are ignored, except by the Taliban's violence.
So to that point, Asad, you are a journalist. What is the role that the Pakistani media is playing in all of this?
Well, I was talking to somebody a little while ago just about this, because I'm doing a story right now looking at some of these exact same issues. And what she said was really pertinent. She said that the media in Pakistan tends to act as an amplification box almost for some of these right-wing points of view on conspiracy theories, on relations with the U.S., on how the Pakistani state should go forward as far as the nationalist narrative is concerned, I guess. And that's that is a big issue, because what ends up happening is that you've got a Pakistani populace, a young populace, that's surrounded by these messages that are fairly narrow and narrow-minded rather. And so you see a country that's moving ever more towards the right. And that's the issue, is that it's increasingly making small shifts at a time, but it's always going towards the right. It never really comes towards the left. And that's the issue. I'll agree with Sana completely. There's a lack of clarity and there's a lack of coherence in the national discourse. There's also a very huge lack of tolerance as well. And the thing is, the thing I'd like to sort of assert here is that it's all very well to say that Pakistan's youth are going to inherit this country and they really, they're liberal progressives and they want to take it forward, but that's not necessarily the case. People like Malik Mumtaz Qadri, who was the guy who shot Salman Taseer, who you spoke about a little while ago, the Punjab governor who shot in January. He was 25 years old. I mean, this is a typical product. Now, he's an outlier, but he's indicative of where the discourse is going.
Well, I think one of the things, and I want to get Salman in here, but one of the issues we're seeing is a problem in education. I mean, as we're researching this, we found that 1 in 10 children who are not in school around the world are Pakistani. 10% of the non-school children across the planet are from Pakistan. How does that play into all of this?
So you're talking about cliques of people, okay? Where the liberal, the Pakistan media works like this: the conservatives stay with the conservatives, and the liberals stay, or the centrist stay separate. They don't know what to do. What hasn't happened in Pakistan, and correct me if you're wrong, if I'm wrong, both of you guys, that why isn't civil society, that's conservatives, centrists, and liberals, agreeing on one basic agenda for peace and stability in the country? That's not an Islamic issue. That's not a secular issue. Why can't people agree on one thing, that the state needs to provide security for the nation?
Sana, I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
I'll repeat what I said earlier again, because it's so deeply polarized. There's really no centrist opinion here. I would love to see a lot of centrist opinion, but there's always this liberal or versus the conservative thing. I mean, it's a very sad state of affairs when you have people condemning drone strikes but not condemning suicide bombings, and people condemning suicide bombings and not condemning drones. So it's like the liberal versus the conservative, and it's really like it's Pakistanis who are dying, it's innocent people who are dying. So it's really not a matter of right or left.
Last year, I was in Egypt in May, and I was in Alexandria, and I was taking a cab ride, and I asked the cab driver, I said, what's wrong? And he said, it basically echoed what you're saying right now. He said there's corruption, the security forces control the judiciary, Mubarak controls everything, nothing can be done. He was very negative, similar in tone to what you're saying. But 8 months later, look what happened in Egypt. Now, my question to you is, can something like that happen where there's a leaderless revolution in Pakistan?
I definitely don't want to see a revolution in Pakistan, because we are so weak right now. Our institutions are so incredibly weak right now that a revolution is only going to have a right shape. I'm going to totally agree with what Asad said previously. In a country where public opinions and public discourse and even political discourse is shaped heavily and influenced heavily by the right, any revolution that's going to be brought about is just going to be inclined toward the right. Because you see, after Bin Laden killings, even after Taseer's killing, after Bhatti's killing, after Bin Laden's killing, nobody is ready to question the military. Like, you see a lot of questions, but these are really snubbed. And we have the same kind of answers every time. The honor card, the sovereignty card, the respect, the patriotism. There is no clarity, and they don't want to speak to us right now. So for a revolution to come, these revolutions tend to be hijacked. That's what we saw in Tunisia. That's what we saw in Egypt. So I think what we need is evolution, to evolve, to know what our ideology is, because right now, even after 6 decades, we still don't know why this country was formed. We don't know if it was based on Islamic principles.
Can I just jump in for a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I just want to jump in. I get that. What I'm saying is, look, any nation, any state, without peace and security, you can't have economics, you can't have education, you can't have any normal life. So if you're just saying that, people can't even have a battle of ideas, well, how do you see the future unfolding?
So there's part of the problem. This is something that was said by Farhana Qazi. She wrote that article, the blog we were speaking about earlier, Where is the Pakistani Revolution? And she says that there's no savior to chant the We Are All Pakistanis mantra today. Clearly, a leaderless revolution cannot stage a day of rage. Now, the interesting thing about that is exactly what happened in Tunisia and Egypt. You had a leaderless revolution. I wonder in Pakistan if revolution is possible. I mean,
we have one tweet, so one view that's coming in from Twitter that's saying the problem is that people aren't willing to criticize the Taliban. So Shabs is saying people want a revolution, they want to get rid of drone attacks, but then they won't speak up against the Taliban.
Yeah, and to that point, we saw in the WikiLeaks that there were actually there was collusion between Pakistani generals requesting drone attacks from the U.S. military. Sometimes those requests were actually denied. But the same Pakistani military will then go out and say, look at what the U.S. is doing with these bombings. Asad, I just want to get your thoughts on this really quickly. I mean, is the Pakistani military playing both sides of the coin, and are the people winding up on the losing end?
Well, I mean, the real issue there is actually that it's the political fallout that you're going to worry about when you make the request for drone strikes public, and that's the real issue there. Is that the anti-Americanism that's abound amongst the people, as far as the politicians are seeing it, as far as political leaders and military leaders are seeing it. They don't want to get the bad press, essentially, of saying that we're colluding with the U.S. But that in itself is indicative of the incoherence of the Pakistani vision at this time.
So let me, if I could just interject a little bit and say, look, in the last 4 years, you've seen a prime minister, two-time Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto assassinated, right? Even the video
Salman,
that you
I
ran...
I ask you to hold that thought. I want to talk about that in the post-show because you're exactly right. If you would give us a little bit of music as we play out, because we want to keep that in. Tune in to stream.aljazeera.com to hear the rest of these thoughts. We're going to continue the conversation there. About some of the issues that we brought up before, but before we do that, we want to give you a chance to hear the music. This is Salman Ahmad, well known for his work with the group Junoon, and we're going to play you a little bit of that spirit of change that he has been speaking of. That was beautiful, man. That was really, really beautiful, and a fitting way to sort of bring us into the segment. Now, I know we're going to jam again in a second, but before we do that, you were making a point about what's happened with Benazir Bhutto, and I actually want to get back into that a little bit because one of the things I love about your music is I feel like it's got this hopeful spirit in it. Music is a way of changing the world, a way of transcending traditional boundaries. At the same time, like when I listen to that song, there's also a certain sadness in it. And I wonder, from your personal perspective as a Pakistani living in the diaspora, how do you feel when you see what's happening in your homeland?
So, Derek, on one level, I look back when I was born, Pakistan was just a teenager, okay? And the country that I was born in is radically changed. When I was born, music, poetry, theater, film, gender equality was accepted, was a part of cultural life, right? There was economic security. Women could go out, drive themselves without covering their heads. No one would, run after them or stop them. But what's happened in the last 64 years is that the vision of the founder of Pakistan, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, which was for a peaceful, just, secular, democratic state, modern Islamic state, has now turned into the Taliban nightmare. And so when I look at this, I realize that civil society has to take some of the blame. Because they allowed, listening to Sana there, she's saying, oh, things are so we don't need a revolution. Well, what are you going to do? Hide in your homes? You need to take control of your destiny, and that means to organize yourself. And you need many, many leaders, women, men, from business, from the world of journalism, to come together and articulate.
But it seems like people are still afraid. I mean, we saw that tweet when they're saying that, look, the military, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, they'll all kill you. I mean, you have to have a certain point where you see what happened in Egypt. The Egyptian revolution was brewing for years, one would argue, but it wasn't until what happened in Tunisia sparked it off that they were willing to take up, it would not even take up arms. They were willing to take up their spirits and go out into the streets. In Tunisia, it took the self-immolation by Muhammad Bouazizi. It's such a violent image, and he wasn't the only one to do it, but that's the one that seemed to spread and people caught up on that image. I just wonder what it takes to spark that willingness to overcome fear in Pakistan.
Well, Derek, so what you need is many, many voices from all sides of the spectrum. I've personally spoken to religious leaders. One of them, Dr. Tahirul Qadri, has millions of followers in Pakistan. He says unequivocally that what Taliban and Al-Qaeda are doing is un-Islamic. He's put a fatwa, 600-page fatwa against terrorism. And he says Islam, there is no jabr in Islam. I mean, there's no force. You can't force people to believe something. So we need voices on the right, the same voices on the right to counter these extremist anarchist voices. And also you need liberals to also not be so rigid in their views that they can't agree on common issues like peace, like education and economic security.
Salman, one thing I want to say, you talk about voices, is we have a lot of voices coming in through Twitter who want to have their say, and they're saying, Bayoz is saying, I'm sure you'll agree with this, Pakistan needs to be liberated through a democratic process. Revolts could leave a power vacuum for terrorists. Do you agree?
Okay, so when I talk about revolution, I'm saying a peaceful, non-political, non-partisan civil rights movement. Look what happened in Egypt, man. Look what happened in Tunisia.
Popular uprising, you're saying.
Popular uprising for a unified, peaceful Pakistan. So that doesn't mean that you're going to run for. You're not looking for votes, but you're putting pressure on the army and the security forces and the state to provide their basic job is to provide security for the people. 35,000 people have been murdered, not by American drones, but by Muslims who call themselves...
But the story, it always winds up being a story about what's happening. What is the role of the Americans? What is the role of India? And this is one of the big things that I wonder about. It seems like the Pakistani populace, Pakistani media, definitely the Pakistani government is obsessed with the issues with India. But it seems that the biggest threats to Pakistan's future are internal.
So Derek, when I was in college, basically General Ziaul Haq was a military dictator. he had power for 11 years. Now this is way before Twitter and Facebook and FM radio. So he controlled the destiny of the country for 11 years. And what he did was he took it back 100 years culturally. You know, he started a Wahhabi style of Islam, practiced Islam, and he created these Frankenstein monsters, which became the Taliban and who fought the Soviets, in that Soviet Afghan jihad. Now, what's happened is that these same Frankenstein monsters are turning on the state and society, and to use, look, I say if you take America out of this mix, that extremism is not going to go away. It's not because, what people are saying is, oh, wait, if America would just leave here, right, everything would come back to normal. No, because this terrorism has been happening for the last 30 years.
Yeah, and also, it's interesting because Asad, who was just with us, has written a piece talking about why he doesn't think the Pakistani revolution is going to happen. That's going to be on our website tomorrow, and we can dive a little deeper into that as well. But one of the things that's interesting is this idea of always blaming the external. I was mentioning during the main broadcast that we've seen this throughout the region. Every dictator or every irresponsible regime, every autocrat seems to be willing to pass the buck and say, it is the so-and-so, it's the Americans, it is the Israelis, it is the Iranians, it is Al-Qaeda, it is the kids on drugs, it is, they will come up with anything.
Totally agree with you, Derek, but here's where we are right now. We live in the 21st century where regional cooperation is the only way to face these mega threats that we have. Right? So you can't live in a neighborhood. Pakistan can't be isolated. It can't be negative. It can't see monsters everywhere, whether they call it India the monster or Israel or America. You have to realize the only way you're going to succeed in today's world is through regional cooperation and global cooperation. So what do you need? You need a new foreign policy which says, let's look at the Pakistan-India relationship. Is this a sustainable relationship? Let's look at the Afghanistan-Pakistan relationship. Is this a sustainable relationship? Right now, the generals are taking money from America, providing them, the drone strikes come from within Pakistan. The state and the military have agreed, signed on, but they look the other way and they say, well, we didn't know there was a drone attack. So the point is, you have to level with the people.
One thing is that the Taliban has basically said they're going to restore Sharia law and they're going to protect the Pakistanis from the Americans. So they've created this,
you
us
saw
against
the image
them.
of Sharia law.
But the reason, Salman, the reason I bring this up is because, there's a poll that says 75% of Pakistanis identify as Muslims first and Pakistanis second. Now that's a big
but here's what
that's
I'm
a big statement, and I just want to get to this. Sorry, I keep cutting you off, but Saad Irfan is saying, on the topic of revolution, he's saying right now the revolution, like the one in Egypt, will only make Pakistan more insecure. And then Sana chimed in, one can never escape the dreadful mention of a revolution in Pakistan. We need to evolve first before we have a revolution.
How are you going to evolve if you're not willing to die for your cause, man? I mean, look, people in Egypt, people died. It wasn't like, everybody was on Twitter and Facebook and people went to Tahrir Square. They risked their lives. I'm saying in Pakistan, non-violent, non-political, non-partisan movement for peace. And people have to put themselves out there. Now, the diaspora, right? I'm in the diaspora. We are willing to risk everything that we have to come and be part of this. But this is not one leader. You need
on that note, we have a tweet from Rabia Garib who's saying, as long as citizens have one foot in Pakistan and the other standing on a foreign passport, they'll never be that want for change.
So the answer to that is that, look, last year the biggest single natural disaster, the floods, took place in Pakistan. It was the Pakistani diaspora which gathered millions and millions of dollars. By being outside, they were to galvanize the international community. So you need both, man.
We're coming to the close of this. I want to actually leave with something that I saw online that I think is beautiful. This is an image of you, Salman, playing a little bit of the Pakistani national anthem.